right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time today. We can go ahead and get started with the meeting. So first thing, could you record your name and affiliation in the chat box, and we will record your attendance. Next on our agenda item is the June 24th meeting summary. Do we have any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, we will move forward to item 3, our public comment period. Do we have any public comments at this time?
We do not.
All right. Thanks, Sid. Moving right along, we will be discussing our Advisory Work Group LRTP Chapter 1 through 6 and Policy Recommendation Review. Excuse me. We will be going to our LRTP process flow. Excuse me. So this is just an update on our process flow. We begin by establishing our foundational metrics, looking at regional growth projections and current data trends. From there, we model different future pathways to understand potential impacts and regional variables. Next, we set our overarching goals and visions based on what we discovered during the scenario analysis. With our goals defined, we evaluated the physical gaps in our systems across transit, highways, and active transportation. We then built out an unconstrained list of potential projects that could address those identified needs. From here, we rank, sort, and fiscally constrain that list to fit our projected budgets. We just wrapped up our evaluation phase, refining the list, and reviewing it against land use scenarios and executing our air quality conformity steps. And the last phase of our process flow is to adopt the plan. This is slated for September 10th of 2026. So we've wrapped up our constrained plan evaluation that is documented in Chapter 7, which we will be discussing later on in the presentation. That was just a quick overview. Any questions? All right, hearing none. Now we will get into our LRTP Chapter 1 through 6 and Policy Recommendation Review. So here is where we'll discuss some of the feedback that we received from the advisory work group regarding chapters 1 through 6. So first and foremost, we received many comments about expanding our safety language. So we wanted to make sure that we shift our focus from vehicle safety to total user safety. So pedestrians, cyclists, and all road users are explicitly protected under that language. We also received comments to clearly distinguish hybrids and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles from all other electric vehicles, specifically noting that the 300-mile range reference applies strictly to battery electric vehicles. We received comments regarding our rail funding, so we want to be able to transparently address funding constraints early on and explain why rail and intermodal options are of utmost importance to our sustainability, but don't receive direct MPO project funding. And then we also received comments to align spending with sustainability goals. So addressing the gap between public demand for clean transit and current funding allocations, where $2.47 billion or 43% of highway funds remains slated for highway expansions and capacity projects. This has been a topic of big contention for us, so we definitely want to make note of how we can explain that away going forward in our LRTP process. We also received comments about strengthening our regional coordination. So clearly explain how scenario planning works, highlighting coordination across regional borders, and emphasize the critical role local governments play in proposing projects for long-range transportation planning. We received comments to clarify funding and local contributions, So updating the overall financial picture to make it clear how local, private, and developer funded means of funding are sorted between funding projects and long-term vision projects. We received comments for incorporating public input and specific transit projects, so explicitly mentioning feedback gathered from the public while updating local transit details to include Route 360 park and ride, references to VPRA and the Fulton Yard facility, and modern design standards. And finally, we received comments to fix map links and visual accuracy. So to ensure the interactive map links matches the visual draft provided, making it simple for everyone to identify which projects are currently funded. Next, we'll get into some of the policy recommendations feedback that we received from the group. So according to comments from the group, we need to prioritize non-expansion solutions first. So we received strong support for a step-by-step approach for congestion management and prioritizing land use planning, operational fixes, and public transit before considering road widenings or lane expansions. We received comments to distinguish policy from state rules, so to clarify how this regional policy differs from existing smart scale requirements, which already require alternative analysis for major road widenings. Also to provide practical proof guidelines. So we need to create a clear, usable guidance showing local governments how to prove a traffic bottleneck cannot be fixed through land use changes alone. Also need to define clear, realistic criteria so localities understand if regional funding could ever be impacted by local zoning decisions, avoiding unrealistic expectations. So in this respect, we want to be able to address the CMP hierarchy through the most technical questions being addressed further and refined and developed through those concepts alongside the TAC. Unlike Smart Scale, the CMP hierarchy currently lacks formal requirement for MPO funding and the LRTP process. And this is identifying a key gap in our current workflow. So rather than requiring full complex studies, a simpler evaluation checklist could serve as a practical alternative. And we will be seeking input on whether a lightweight checklist approach is the right path forward for localities and project scoring. So moving right along, we received comments about aligning our regional rules with state standards. So we want to be able to match local roadway definitions and project guidelines directly with VDOT classifications and VTrans goals to keep state and regional priorities on the same page. Also establishing clear project definitions, so formally define what qualifies as a regionally significant project or network, so all local partners are using the same standard. We received comments to protect long-term multi-phase corridors, so having the ability to safeguard large multi-stage plans like the Powhite Parkway corridor, so essential individual pieces don't get accidentally dropped between plan updates, and to ensure seamless network continuity. So keeping long-range transportation visions consistent over time, and this will prevent critical roadway connection projects from losing momentum as local plans are updated. Any questions so far?
No questions, but the feedback so far sounds good.
Thank you. So moving right along, we received comments about our scenario planning expansion. So we want to be able to build on the success of the initial long-range planning by testing broader, more diverse ranges of future possibilities instead of just relying on business as usual projections. We want to be able to create stronger policies and analytical tools to ensure future transportation projects are directly aligned with local housing needs and land use decisions. We received feedback regarding integrating environmental resiliency. So broadening the planning framework to explicitly factor in climate resilience and environmental sustainability alongside housing and regional development. We also received comments about strengthening interagency coordination. So we want to be able to establish a unified framework that helps regional agencies work together seamlessly on long-range transportation planning, housing, and environmental goals. So any questions so far on that section, on the policy review or the review of chapters 1 through 6? Yes, JJ.
Thank you for that overview, Dorian. I was just wanting to put it out there for that land use component of the, what was it, the CMG or CMP. Is it that we should be writing a policy to check off a box of like whether a group agrees with the land use, or should it be more in the scoring of the projects, how they kind of are currently, where based on the land use at that location, you get certain points, you know, whether it's density or things like that?
I just want to get the essence of your question one more time. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I was wondering if that land use piece needs to be written into a policy framework to say, you know, have a checkbox that the group that's evaluating the projects agrees with that changing the land use wouldn't change the bottleneck at that location. But I know in terms of scoring projects, the land use is already a piece of that typically, you know, whether it's density or proximity to certain destinations and such. So is it, I guess that my question really is, should we be developing a policy regarding the land use and an interpretation of whether someone agrees with that decision there, and more just keep it on the scoring side for the projects submitted and to be scored that way?
I think that's something that we do want to speak with the TAC about and actually formalize that with the policy board as well. It could be a combination, it could be one or the other, but we want to make sure that it is commensurate with how well localities are keeping up with their land use and changing their land use, and something that we can use that will actually get our projects through. So we want to make sure that we have that available for discussion through the TAC and the policy board.
That makes
Miles,
sense.
did you have anything on that?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd add, so JJ, like one option that we could consider that I think we'll be working with the TAC on would be looking at whether the existing land use in zoning is already consistent with the locality's comprehensive plan, or if there's expectations that there would be land use change over time, and how much of a factor would that potentially play in adjusting things? You know, just a way to kind of formalize it a little bit more that, hey, we looked at land use, that's not going to be enough to solve this problem completely. Let's look at the next set of solutions and see if those can help get us there. It's really more of our idea was really to look at how many options can we rule out before we move on to the capacity solutions. And I think we're already doing it. It's just making it a more formal process within the MPO. So I think the studies and the work that everyone's already doing are already considering these different factors. Is just trying to figure out how do we document it in a way that we can explain that's why we landed on the solution that we landed on.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, we will move on in our presentation to the LRTP draft document, Chapter 7 overview. So this covers the final phase of our LRTP process. Within this chapter, we want to answer two main questions. How well does the constrained list of projects do in meeting regional established performance measures? And how well do we address federal environmental justice and Title VI regulations? So we start off by addressing the legal framework and purpose. So our analysis integrates federal non-discrimination laws, Title VI, NEPA, ADA, Title IX, and Age Discrimination Act. and state level policy via the Virginia Environmental Justice Act. And the core objective here is to ensure fair treatment, meaningful involvement, and proportional investments so that historically underserved, disenfranchised, and vulnerable communities are not overlooked in the regional funding decisions. So our Title VI analysis, we use 2023 ACS 5-year estimates. Second here. The map, so what we want to do is map communities where demographic indicators meet federal Title VI equity thresholds, representing less than 51% of the total regional population. This section highlights how we allocate over half of all planned transportation benefits directly to these Title VI communities, including 52% of total project mileage and 56% of proposed funding dollars going towards those communities. The key conclusion from this is to confirm that project mileage and funding distributions meet and slightly exceed baseline population shares, ensuring fair and equitable investments across region. On to our environmental justice analysis. This is a broader definition of need, so this expands equity tracking beyond standard federal requirements by incorporating 6 key inequality markers, including income levels, disability, single-parent households, access to vehicles, high housing costs, and seniors. So we have a more focused target area here. This applies a stricter statistical cutoff to pinpoint key environmental justice communities, which together make up 28% of the region's overall population. So this allocates 27% of the plan's projected miles, so 73 miles, and 34% of base funding directly to these targeted EJ communities. And the key conclusion here is that this confirms that despite using higher screening thresholds, transportation funding stays proportionate to population size and provides strong baseline investment for vulnerable communities. The next section is our performance-based planning evaluation. So this tracks standard national metrics across 5 key areas, which include roadway safety, pavement bridge condition, roadway reliability, freight movement, and transit performance and safety. This evaluates how well different long-term growth options align with regional priorities to guide future investment decisions. And it models 5 future paths ranging from trendline growth and resilient traditional growth options to balanced and worst case scenario doomsday projections. And it also uses visual gauges to show how these growth scenario affects performance measures across the region. So we can get into each one of our goal areas. So for safety, our goal was to have a 100% reduction in number of serious and fatal and serious injury crashes for all modes. Our projects are projected to prevent 28 fatal crashes and 165 serious injury crashes. This is an overall reduction of 23% regionally. Outside of our project list, it's kind of difficult to understand what the changes in safety will be. If we take into account emerging technologies such as vehicle-to-vehicle communication, vehicle-to-infrastructure communication, and other crash mitigation technology, it's hard to tell outside of our project list how well safety will be improved in the future. But looking strictly at our project list, we will see a reduction of 23%, which inches us closer to the 100% reduction. Fatal and serious injury crashes for active transportation rely mostly on localized investments, so we want to make sure to note that in the plan as well. So the key takeaways here is that safety crash projections currently reflect only constrained projects and do not include $700 million in dedicated Virginia Highway Safety Improvement Plan safety funds. Systemically coding the high injury network, active transportation and transit vision networks into routine project development ensures funding targets and highest need corridors, and then protecting vulnerable road users. We want to be able to prioritize systemic safety investments where risk is highest and align with Chapter 4 strategic safety strategies and policy needs. Any questions on that? Okay, moving
Just
on.
real quick, how
Yes.
did you get to the 23% reduction? Was that through looking at the model, or where did that calculation come from in terms of fatal crashes?
So
It was
that
on the
was
last
through
slide. Thanks.
that was through looking at some of our crash modification factors that we looked at through the project scope that we received from our universal project. Any follow-up on that?
No, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So on to our sustainability section. Some of the key takeaways from our analysis is that strong job access via transit and walking. So public transit and walking scenarios deliver robust results, meeting or exceeding the target of 15% increase and 30-minute job access across most future growth models. But driving access declines due to traffic. So driving misses job access goals in almost all scenarios because traffic congestion outpaces infrastructure gains. With high growth scenarios, actually seeing a reduced 30-minute reach. We received mixed results for destination access. So reaching everyday destinations within 30 minutes shows mixed outcomes, generally falling short of the 15% target across driving, biking, and walking modes. And down to our transit coverage. Our transit coverage expansion is on track. Regional public transit covers successfully meets the 10% growth goal across future scenarios, expanding access for both residents and workplace destinations. Additionally, from this section, we saw that driving reductions depend on growth patterns. So reaching the 10% target to lower per capita VMT relies on compact development with high density scenarios coming closer to the goal, while low transit scenarios see driving increases. With respect to compact growth, this drives lower emissions. Per capita emissions drop mostly in higher growth scenarios where alternative travel modes are convenient and local goods and services are nearby, whereas lower growth models increases per person emissions due to heavy reliance on driving. So land use influences daily driving. Daily travel habits and success of public transit are directly shaped by where housing is located and how dense communities are developed. So a core takeaway for regional sustainability is meeting long-term environmental targets requires tightly integrated housing, land use, and transportation planning rather than treating transportation planning infrastructure in isolation. Onto our reliability section. Peak hour traffic delays surge and sprawling growth. So the goal to reduce peak hour delay by 10% is met only under the low growth RVA sinks model, whereas car-centric sprawl back to the future cause delays to surge by over 200% as more drivers flood the roadway network. Again, compact development reduces solo driving. A higher growth scenario such as Ecotopia and Back to the Future make the most progress towards a 10% reduction in single occupancy vehicle trips, as dense land use makes transit, walking, and biking far more practical. Transit ridership hits targets under focused growth. So Ecotopia successfully reaches the 75% traffic ridership growth target by concentrating development around transit corridors, followed by Back to the Future. And then moderate growth delivers steady gains. So baseline and balanced growth models such as Madden Safe show steady incremental gains in transit ridership, while low growth options such as RVA Sinks results in the lowest overall gains and increased solo driving. So our active transportation infrastructure goal is exceeded in all future land uses. Dedicated miles for biking and walking are locked in for a 60% increase across all future scenarios, which surpasses our 25% target. Sprawl severely impacts severe impacts on the traffic congestion. So the car-centric Back to the Future scenario leads to a dramatic 201% increase in peak hour delays, showing how unmanaged growth severely worsens traffic. Of course, compact growth boosts transit success. And the core takeaway here is that high growth scenarios fail to deliver congestion relief unless the region actively shifts into focuses towards adaptive land uses and multimodal transportation solutions. And lastly, we get into our resiliency measure. So our resiliency infrastructure targets are met through all future land uses. The commute pressure reduces backup capacity. So while low growth models easily exceed the 5% target for redundant capacity during the PM peak, high growth scenarios see notable inclines in overlapping workplace, school, retail, and freight traffic strains on the system. Scenarios such as Back to the Future and Ecotopia scenarios meet the 5% target for driving and transit connectivity, using compact and transit-oriented development to expand route and option connections. And then the bicycle and pedestrian network connectivity holds steady across all future land use models, while low growth scenarios misses the regional connectivity targets due to weaker system expansion. So the key takeaway under our resiliency section is that in high growth scenarios, the decreases in redundant capacity indicate that peak hour travel demands can overwhelm the network if commuter, commercial, and freight traffic is not coordinated regionally. Do we have any questions on Chapter 7? Of note, we did send this out last week, and we thank you all. Yes, Trip.
So this is something I think I commented in general previously. I'm surprised, don't have the ability to dig into the model, but how the Back to the Future scenario comes so close to the Ecotopia model on a number of things where, not surprisingly, you found that VMT, transit connectivity, emissions all do the best under the Ecotopia. The Back to the Future scenario, when it's described in Chapter 7, is a high growth future that says it's defined by decentralized settlement patterns. But then elsewhere, it's described as showing compact land use patterns. So it doesn't seem consistent to me, and maybe that's why the numbers don't shake out the way I would have expected.
We may need to edit the language on that, but the Back to the Future scenario typically involves it's typically a high growth scenario, but the development is decentralized, so that will include a lot of VMT increases in that scenario.
Well, that's what I would have thought. But then when you look at your charts with a little, like speedometer kind of thing, it doesn't seem to show that.
I'm sorry, not VMT, but I'm sorry. Got to get back to my presentation. Sorry about that.
I think one thing, Trip, that may explain some of the divergence, I think, in what you're seeing is a lot of the metrics, because we were comparing across different growth scenarios, were normalized by population. And so you'll see there may be both Back to the Future and Ecotopia are high growth, for example. And so on a per person basis, the VMT is going down across both of them, but you're seeing more benefit on an Ecotopia compared to Back to the Future. So I don't know if that's necessarily everything here, but I think that is part of one of the things for everyone in reviewing this to keep in mind is that a lot of these metrics are normalized by the population to try and provide some level of comparison overall. So I think that's to say the VMT overall is much higher in those scenarios compared to the low growth scenario, but there's also a higher population in the mix as well.
Well, I guess that would make sense for accounting for part of the difference. If so, I think you need more of the narrative to explain that, because it, in a number of places, the conclusion is that the two scenarios both achieve the objective. And I think there's a huge difference. I also do think that there's, you should look at the description of it, the model on, let's see, I've got it up on my screen, page, I guess it's 9 of draft chapter 7, does characterize it as decentralized, but then there are several other places where it's referred to as compact growth, and I just don't think that's accurate.
We'll go back to throughout the document and make sure that the language is consistent. So we thank you on that feedback. Any other questions or concerns? So we will be taking feedback for Chapter 7 up until, I would say, next Tuesday, because the goal is to have a draft plan out for public review, 30-day public review by July 29th. So any other comments or concerns regarding Chapter 7, please get those in as soon as possible, and we'll make sure to make those changes to the document accordingly. The next section in our Chapter 7 is our air quality conformity. So the final air quality conformity report was approved by the RTPO policy board and submitted to FHWA with formal federal conformity determination expected within that 45-day period. The Richmond region currently meets all EPA air quality standards, and Transportation 2050 is projected to maintain full compliance without triggering violations. During the public review period, we did not receive any public comments, so we were able to move forward that in a timely manner as well without any objections or comments. And then the final section of our Chapter 7 was the policy recommendations, broken down to considerations. What were the lessons learned from the LRTP process and modeling? The recommendations, so corrective actions for those lessons learned, and the discussion, how do we facilitate this change in the next LRTP and future regional scale planning? So again, please get any comments, questions, or concerns into me as soon as possible regarding Chapter 7. We will incorporate those changes. So what are the next steps for the LRTP draft document? Well, we want to revise the document based on the advisory work group feedback, provide the 30-day public comment period for the draft document, and make further revisions before the September 10th adoption date. So that will conclude the meeting. I want to make sure that I open the floor up once again for any questions or concerns. All right, hearing and seeing none, we want to thank you all for your time today. Our next meeting will be the last Wednesday in August, and that will be, let's see here, August 26th. And this will basically be a closeout meeting where we, again, gather any questions or concerns or lessons learned from you all. So in the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns about, again, chapters 1 through 6 or chapter 7, please feel free to reach out to me personally via email. And again, we thank you all for your time today. And if there are no questions or concerns going forward, then we can adjourn the meeting.
Thanks, Dorian.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dorian.
Thank you.
you.